I'm going to take the time this afternoon to talk about our work on the education level of women participants and how this might influence their response to a community development intervention. And I want to focus particularly on outcomes such as socioeconomic status, hygiene practice, child growth, and child nutrition. Now, everyone in this room knows the following, that household characteristics vary among participants in most community development projects. However, there's surprisingly little known about very, very specific household and personal characteristics of participants that might influence their response to these interventions. The intervention I'm going to talk about was implemented by Heifer Nepal, and it was an intensive community and social capital development aimed at reducing poverty. The intervention was implemented via livestock and values-based training in women's self-help groups. And I want to emphasize at the beginning that nutrition was not specifically addressed in any detail as a part of this intervention. Now, Heifer would like very, very much to believe that all of the participants responded very well to the intervention and that all the stakeholders improved their standard of living, their income, their socioeconomic status, that the animals were healthy, and even that the children were healthy. But unfortunately, when we look very carefully at what really happens in some of the Heifer project areas, we find that there is a variety of responses to the intervention, and this became very interesting to us. What you see on this slide is the change over 4 years in socioeconomic status, income, height, and weight Z-scores for children living in households where the family was participating in the Heifer activity. And you can see for each one of these outcomes, there's quite a distribution in terms of the change in each of these measures over the 4 years of the project period. Now, it became really interesting to look at the people who were at this end of the curve because it became obvious that for some participants, outcomes may have worsened. Why was this the case? Why did not everyone improve? Why did some people perhaps not do as well as we hoped or expected, or as even the majority did? Now, everyone in this room, again, could come up with the list of household characteristics that could affect outcomes. And this is a partial list, but it includes such things as income, household size, socioeconomic status at baseline, the degree of participation in the intervention, the educational level of the adults, and of course many, many other factors are possible. And we all know and have discussed these last 2 days together that these factors are linked in many, many ways. And it's very complex to sort out what's going on with each of these. What I want to focus on this afternoon is this one area, the educational level of the women, and just see how that relates to the other aspects of this web of factors that influence outcomes. Now, it's rather surprising to look at the literature and find out how little is really known about how maternal education predicts outcomes. There are some definite relationships that are known. For example, the relationship between maternal education, newborn survival, and infant mortality, and also the relationship between maternal education and child health. There's also strong evidence for a relationship between maternal education and child development and child height. But I must say that there is some degree of controversy about these two relationships. There's relatively less known or understood about how maternal education might impact response to specific community interventions, and for this reason we designed our specific aims to evaluate the relationship between the level of women's education and the responses to a long-term livestock-based community intervention sponsored by Heifer Nepal. And as I mentioned, we will look at socioeconomic status, income, hygiene practices, child health, child growth, child dietary diversity, and a few other items just to see the relationship with the relationship to women's education. Now, on this slide, I want to introduce you to the specific methods of this study. The study was conducted in 3 districts of Nepal, where 6 communities, pair-matched communities, were identified in these 3 districts. And in each pair, one was randomly assigned to receive the community development activities at baseline, and the second to receive it 12 months later. This slide shows schematically the details of the study design. Again, communities were randomized to early intervention or late intervention, starting 12 months later, and the gray color reflects the intensity of the intervention, which continued to the 48-month time point and even continues beyond. The arrows indicate the survey times at baseline, 6, 12, 18, 24, and then at 48 months. And at each of these survey times, a typical detailed household survey was conducted along with child health and nutrition modules and child anthropometry. Now, we decided to analyze our outcome measures in relation to the highest educational level attained by any woman in the household, rather than just the mother of the child. And the thinking was that since these were conjoined households, that women shared their knowledge and their expertise, and they were going to influence each other in terms of their practices in the household and with the children. So our selection was for the highest educational level by any woman in the household. And this slide shows the distribution of those results. 26% of the households, the highest educated woman had no education. In 44%, there was a woman who had some or had completed primary education. And in 30% of the households, there was a woman who had some or completed secondary education. And there was a total of 431 households in this study. Now, I want to start by saying that the Heifer Intervention works, and the intervention is designed to improve livelihoods and reduce poverty. And so we see that over the 4 years, household income and household SES score did improve over the 48 months of the survey. We were interested to see if there were correlations of women's education with other factors at baseline, and we found only very, very weak correlations of the women's educational level, baseline household SES income, and animal ownership. Now, this slide is one of a series of slides set up in the same way. They show the time of the survey, baseline 12 months, 24 months, and 48 months, and the level of women's education is shown by the pink color indicating none, the orange color indicating primary education, and the green color indicating secondary education. So you can see here that there was not a lot of difference related to women's education level in the household and increase in income over the 48 months of the survey. On the next slide, we see the SES score and women's education, and the pattern is somewhat different. These higher educated women households started out a little bit better, but the difference increased, and the gap widened as the time went by. And in fact, when we looked at this trajectory in more detail, we found that there was a faster increase in SES in households with a higher level of women's education. And here you see the change between survey times from baseline to 12, baseline to 24, and baseline to 48 months, with the green again indicating those households where a woman had at least some or completed secondary education. Now, on this slide and the following slide are 2 measures of household hygiene practices. The first is child defecation practices, and again, everybody improved over time. I would say that this analysis, when adjusted for group assignment and SES score at baseline, the women's education level was significant. And here the household hygiene related to women's education was measured by reported soap use. Again, for simplicity here, just showing baseline and 48 months. All of the education groups increased, but it was not significant in the no education group, and it was significant in the secondary and primary education groups. Here's child diet diversity and women's education. Again, the gap seems to be increasing here as time goes by, with better educated households showing better dietary diversity for the children. And here is the change in growth for children less than 60 months of age. Height AZ score on the left and weight AZ score on the right of the slide. Weight AZ score increased quite dramatically in all three of these education groups, but only the children of the most educated mothers increased their height AZ score over the 48 months of the survey. In a regression analysis, we found that women's education was a significant predictor of increase over time of SES, child dietary diversity, and child HAZ score when adjusted for group assignment, baseline SES score, baseline animal score, and baseline income. And we did not find that there was a relationship between women's education and the incidence of diarrhea, the child's illness score, the development or success of improved kitchen gardens, and other facets of the intervention. The strengths and the weakness of the study are shown here. We were able to conduct a longitudinal survey in 3 districts over 4 years, and we were able to confirm the household women's education level during these 6 survey points. Possible weaknesses include our assumption that the highest women's educational level in the household is the most important factor. We did not look at the effect of the father's education, the mother of the child's education, and certainly there may be many, many unrecognized confounders in this type of work. In conclusion, however, we say that women's education likely mediates some responses to inputs provided by community and household level interventions, that a better educational level may enhance the ability of households to put interventions into practice, thereby improving SES as well as child growth indices and child diet quality. Alternatively, we must also state that women's education could represent a proxy for some other household factor that allows families to benefit from the intervention. We further conclude that investigation of these relationships may enhance understanding of ways to assist households with lower educational attainments and to promote or develop interventions that are tailored to the varying educational status of the participants. I want to acknowledge the NTAG team that was instrumental in conducting the field work here, Heifer Nepal field staff, Nutrition Innovation Lab for funding, and most of all the participating families. Thank you very much.